Elections will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Present.
Vice Chair Gonzalez. Beckley. Here. Busey.
Here.
Clardy. Fierro. Jeton. Schofield.
Here.
Swanson.
Here.
A quorum is present. Good morning, members. We're going to begin with some housekeeping items. We'll take up bills by non-committee members first, if the author is present, and then move to bills of committee members. As a reminder, if there's anyone who wishes to testify on any of the bills today, you must register on the electronic witness information kiosk located outside of the hearing room before you testify and indicate which bills you wish to testify on. Please make sure you finish and click submit on the form. This seems to happen either maybe once a week or once every other week. It's a tragic thing for someone to sit here for that long, and it turns out maybe after we've closed registration that they didn't submit their form. We don't want that to happen to you. We'll be limiting public testimony to 2 minutes, and when you first hear the first timer go off, you have 15 seconds left to close testimony. Let the record reflect Jessica Gonzalez is present and Representative Fierro is present. Also, if you do not wish to testify today in person, you can leave written public testimony or comment through our website on any agenda item we have hearing today until the hearing is adjourned. One important announcement is that House Bill 330 by Kane has been withdrawn from the calendar. So if you were here to yell about that one, you're free to go and go into the world. You're safe now. All right, let's going to move on. The chair lays out House Bill 2339 and recognizes Representative Click to explain the bill.
Good morning, everyone. Jury wheels are populated with entries from the county's voter registration list and DPS driver's license list. If a person is summoned to jury duty but identifies themselves as a non-resident of the county or a non-citizen, they are excused from jury duty. Their name is then sent to the appropriate officials to have their name removed from the voting rolls as they have self-identified as being ineligible to vote. While these lists can be used to remove the ineligible registrants from the voter rolls, current law prevents these lists, which can be obtained by the public through a records request. They are prevented from being used to review the list of voters from previous elections. This comparison is a Class C misdemeanor. HB 2339 allows and requires the Attorney General to quarterly review these lists and investigate as needed. By allowing these entities to compare the list of voters to the list of self-identified, I'm open for any questions and reserve the right to close.
Members, any questions? We will bring you back up.
Thank you.
Move on to witnesses. Chair calls James Slattery. Good morning, Mr. Slattery. James Slattery, Senior Staff Attorney at the Texas Civil Rights Project. Got you shown as being against the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I wish to express great concern about several aspects of the current version of the bill. Sections 2 and 3 would require county clerks to send a list of those who've been excused from jury service for lack of citizenship or lack of county residence to the Attorney General for an investigation without any evidence at that point to suggest that these individuals have actually committed a crime worthy of an investigation. It is not a crime merely to be on the voter rolls with an out-of-date address. Because voters sometimes forget to cancel their old voter registration until an imminent election prompts them to do so, the overwhelming likelihood is that most individuals referred for a criminal investigation here will have simply just not yet updated their registration. Further, there are important safeguards missing in the bill. For instance, the bill does not require the clerk or the Attorney General to check whether the individuals being referred for investigation register to vote after obtaining residence or citizenship. which would make them eligible voters despite the jury excusal. Similar efforts to match voters on the rolls to lists developed by non-election agencies have often led to disaster in Texas. In 2012, an effort to match voters on the rolls with dead individuals in the Social Security system flagged many voters who were very much alive. In 2019, the state of Texas used flawed data from DPS to investigate people for potential election offenses if they had indicated at one moment in time that they were not citizens, without taking into account whether their citizenship status had changed thereafter. That effort collapsed after a judge ruled that the effort, quote, exemplifies the power of government to strike fear and anxiety and to intimidate the least powerful among us, end quote. And after the state of Texas had incurred $450,000 in costs and attorney's fees. Both of these efforts also disproportionately affected voters of color. Without more stringent protections, this bill risks another costly debacle for the people and government of the state of Texas.
Thanks, sir. Members, any questions? Distinguished Slattery.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give you a heads up on deck, but just for those in the audience to have an idea, we have 7 witnesses remaining to testify, all in favor of the bill. So if you find yourself repeating the same thing or someone says what you're going to say, I'm going to ask that you maybe, give some courtesy so we can hear some other bills. And by the way, we're going to be headed to the floor soon enough. The chair calls Cindy Phillips. All right, I'll say it for you. I've got you as Cindy Phillips. You're on behalf of the Convention of States and yourself, and you are for this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please
and
proceed.
I don't have a lot to say. Just anything for election integrity, I'm here. This is my first time to get involved in politics, so I apologize that I'm new to all of this, but
Cool.
I'm willing to get involved and get in the game because it's for I'm doing this for my children, my grandchildren, and the future generations, so that we have a secure and safe and our democracy and republic survives. So.
Welcome to the club. I think you'll find everybody in the audience at some point had their first time getting involved into politics, and so did everybody else on this dais. So.
Thank you.
It's good luck.
Thank you. I'm in it.
It's a fun thing. I'm glad you're here.
So yeah, thank you.
You can go broke doing it. Just FYI. All right. The chair now calls Sean Hall Legiona. I'm going to let you tell me, ma'am. Can you tell me your name? Oh, yes, ma'am. He'll pass it out.
It's Laquona.
All right, so let me go for this. So I've got you as Sean Hall Laquona from the Laquona Law, PLLC, DBA, Laquona Life Ministries. Burning for quote?
Yes, it's our church.
Okay. And yourself, and you are for this bill, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
All right. First of all, thank you, Chairman Kane and representatives for having us here today. I represent our blood covenant in Christ Jesus, for Jesus is Lord. On behalf of them, I thank you for giving proper place for free speech and exercising faith through worship, hearing word of God, which is his concern. I'm here to support House of Representatives Bill 2339, bringing the word perfect to be inserted in place of the word compare on line 7. It's in section 1A. Almighty says, my vote is my seed. To make the whole, every legitimate seed must be counted. Sunday, I cast my vote in our neighborhood election. Yesterday, I cast my vote in our city election here in Austin, Travis County. I'm a citizen. I'm an inhabitant who dwells here, performing an occupation. We call it the practice of law. We call it reconciling people to one another. I'm sure you understand that, Chairman Kane. I'm a law-abiding, card-carrying member of the State Bar of Texas, sufficiently appreciating and having considered even applying the interest at stake pursuant to the Texas Rules of Disciplinary Procedure. Why am I saying these things? I'm saying these things because I have the privilege of standing for truth, and I have been standing for truth as I've practiced the law. But as a result, today I'm unable to vote in our election in the State Bar of Texas for president-elect. Why am I unable to practice, or why am I unable to vote?
Yeah.
It's an issue of integrity. So I'm standing on the truth. I'm advocating for justice before the State Bar. I'm here today because it's a good thing to perfect the.
And how does this pull into this bill that we're hearing today?
Because everybody's vote is their seed.
Okay.
And if you're not allowed to vote because your name has not been perfected on a roster, then you have been denied that right to cast your seed into the election, whether it's for a man or a woman, whoever it may be.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Members, any questions for this witness? That was important testimony. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect that Representative Jatan is present. The chair calls Eric Opiella. And if the clerk could set the timer to 15 seconds for Mr. Opiella, please. I've got you as Eric Opiella. You're here on behalf of yourself and you're for this bill. Is that correct?
It is.
Please proceed.
So I want to address two issues that were raised by Mr. Slattery in 15 seconds. First of all, the Attorney General is better equipped than district clerks to determine issues of residency, issues of qualification under the election code. The clerks don't have any idea what to do with this information once they get it, and the Attorney General is better equipped to do that than them. Secondly, the issue that he raised about persons who have since registered to vote in a different county or made that determination not affected by this bill. The only people who are on the list that's provided to the Attorney General are those persons who were currently registered to vote in that county and at the same time said they weren't a resident or a citizen not qualified for jury duty service. And so open for any questions. Probably didn't get it in 15 seconds, but it was close.
You're good. So when I'm looking at this bill, what is the offense we're talking about? So 13.07 would be voter registration, right? We're not making it an offense under 18.068 of Representative Glick's bill that says, or they're adding just the lines, or a resident of the county in which the voter is registered to vote. That's not making it a crime, right?
Yeah, this bill does not create any new offenses, okay? All it does is provide the tools to the people who are best able to use those tools to determine whether an offense has been committed.
Excellent. So we're not going to criminalize people with mistakes. I've heard that a lot up here.
Not at all.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Opiella? Thanks, sir. All right, the chair calls Robert Green. We've got you as Robert Green here on behalf of the Travis County Republican Party Election Integrity Committee and yourself, and you're for this bill. Is that correct?
That is correct,
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the author for filing this bill. Mr. Opiella expressed most of the stuff that I was interested in, but the fact that we need to always have a clean voter registration list, and if someone is a non-citizen or they have vacated the county for whatever reason and no longer reside here, they should be expeditiously removed from the voter rolls so that we don't get instances where people are either voting in two separate counties or voting when they're not a citizen. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair calls Fatima Menendez. Fatima Menendez. All right. By the way, there are 3 left in favor of it. Consideration. We've got 12 bills left. Chair calls Henry Bonner.
I'll go ahead and pass. Mr. Green.
Everybody give a platform. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Hopefully you got to do at least a few for us today, though. Chair calls Gerald Welty. Mr. Welty. Okay, it's Jared Welty. On behalf of the Convention of States and yourself, you're for this bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Please proceed.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate all that you're doing, the committee, in regards to these election bills. And this bill, it is in the right direction. It protects the voters. And just thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your testimony. It's valuable. She's letting me know my mic is off. Thank you for your valuable testimony. It's kind, sir. Members, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Welty.
You're welcome.
Chair calls Johanna McCrary.
I'll pass on this one.
Excellent, ma'am. You still got to come up at some point, okay? I mean, you came today, just maybe not now. All right. Members, any reason you'd like to hear from the Secretary of State? None? Okay. Is there that's all we have for registered testimony? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2339? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Click to close on the bill.
Thank you, members. I close.
Members, any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Representative Click. If there is no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 3491 and also lays out the committee substitute. Chair recognizes Representative Parker to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, thanks for allowing me to come forward this morning with the substitute for 3491. During the 81st regular session, our friend and colleague, Chairman Rafael Anchia, passed House Bill 2524, which amended the Elections Code by enacting various critical pre-election testing procedures. Among various safeguards, Chairman Anchia's bipartisan legislation ensured that new electronic voting systems undergo hardware diagnostic testing and a public test of the system's logic and accuracy. My bill, House Bill 3491, seeks to complement and streamline that effort to add vital protections that are already in place to further protect our electronic voting systems and election data. This legislation would simply ensure that a log is maintained to track the chain of custody for certain electronic voting system media. House Bill 3491 would require individuals involved in the transfer of electronic voting systems media to sign their signature on the log and record the equipment serial number or unique identifier. Members, counties across the state are already doing these guidelines, but they're not following through always in practice. This bill would simply adopt the guidelines into statute. In addition, House Bill 3276 would require the Secretary of State to create a standard form to maintain the log, which would be used in elections statewide. Elections administrators across the state currently have forms that contain the same information but do not have a standard format. By using a standard format to maintain the log and track the custody of electronic voting systems media, the forms would be easier for our citizens and auditors to provide oversight to the elections process across our many different counties. Mr. Chairman, thanks for allowing me to lay it out today and be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm actually going to go to a resource witness right now real quick to maybe explain this to us. So the chair calls Christina Atkins.
Good morning. My name is Christina Atkins with the Secretary of State's office, testifying on HB 3491.
Yes, ma'am. Members, any questions? Because I've got some. So you heard Representative Parker explain this bill, and he had mentioned that some don't do this properly. Or could you explain that to us?
Yes, sir. So the provisions that he referenced that are in Chapter 129 of the Election Code are actually really great provisions of law that provide a lot of security procedure. In addition to that, our office has prescribed some advisories related to this to kind of add some detail. We actually have requirements in our advisories to maintain logs like this, but adding this here would definitely make it a stronger requirement. So I think some of the counties, it's a lot to keep track of. And so when they are looking at what the requirements are, they may look straight to the law rather than looking at our advisory. So this is definitely something that I think will
Excellent.
strengthen
Well, that's
those.
helpful. So would you say this is in a way codifying some of the advisories?
Absolutely.
These are best practices?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much.
It's a good thing.
It's good. Members? Okay. Thanks so much.
Sure.
All right. Chair now calls Gerald Welty. Excellent. Chair now calls Cindy Phillips. All right, I got you. Here is Cindy Phillips here on behalf of the Convention of States and yourself, and you're for this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please proceed.
And you're going to see a common theme. It's going to be very brief for every time I get up here, because I just want to reiterate how anything that protects the integrity of the vote I'm all for. And after watching everything that took place this last year, I keep hearing a common theme. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm learning in a crash course about all of this, and learning the importance of the chain of custody and everything, and especially dealing with voting machines and everything. So yes, I'm 100% for this bill. So thank
Excellent. Thanks so much. Members, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Chair now calls Johanna McCrary. All right, ma'am. I've got you as Johanna McCrary. You're here on behalf of yourself, and you are for this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please.
I think this is an excellent added feature for our voting system. I love the fact that, technology is taking everything, ahead, but we do need to have safeguards. And so that's why I support this.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Chair now calls Robert Green. All right. Robert L. Green, Travis County Republican Party Election Integrity Committee, and yourself, and you were for this bill. Is that correct, Mr. Green?
That is correct, Chair.
Please proceed.
Chain of custody. I was an inspector and an investigator for a health department agency for 36 years. The importance of chain of custody is critical if you ever need to take anything farther for an escalated enforcement procedure. I can testify that I'm also been an election judge and a precinct chair for almost 10 years. Mm-hmm. And in dealing with Travis County elections here in town, we would, from the polls, there would be a flash drive that was delivered to Travis County elections, but there was no chain of custody documented from the time that it actually arrived at the election headquarters to the time that that flash drive was eventually counted. So no one really knew if a flash drive may have been substituted, or if one was added, or one was taken away.
Well, Mr. Green, I think we have bills on that, or referred bills that do that.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying now. Chain of custody is so important, and that's really all I had to say.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Questions?
Green. No. Thank you, Mr. Green. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3491? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Parker to close on House Bill 3491.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, appreciate your time. I know you're very busy with many to hear today. Just you heard the testimony from the witnesses. This is an important piece of legislation, I think, to move us forward, to restore strength and full transparency and confidence in our elections. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for hearing the bill.
Just to be clear, you did just lay out House Bill 3491, right?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
House Bill 3491.
Thanks, sir. That is it. Thank you, Representative Parker. If there's no objection, the committee substitute will be withdrawn and the bill would be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn and the bill is left pending. The chair lays out House Bill 3974 and recognizes Representative Paul to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I appreciate you letting the opportunity to lay out this bill. This bill is about residency, and the term residence is clearly defined in Election Code 1.015. It means a domicile or one's fixed place of habitation. You cannot inhabit, sleep in, use the restroom, or take a shower in a post office box. That means the United States Postal Service post office box or commercial post office box cannot be a residence. A USPS box will have a P.O. box number in the address, where a commercial post office looks like an apartment address. It might state 123 Main Street, number 44. We went to online voter registration at the Secretary of State's website. In the field for residence address, it says street address and apartment number. If none, describe where you live. Do not include P.O. Box, rural route, or business address. In the next field, it says mailing address, street address, and apartment number if mail cannot be delivered to your residency address. This bill codifies our current practice. It's not changing the law to a new way of doing business. The bill also clarifies that a person may not move their voter registration for the purpose of influencing election. We have voters that change their voter registration in a place where they do not and will not reside in order to vote in a particular election, then move their voter registration back to their actual residency after the election. The easiest way to do this is to move your voter registration to a commercial post office box in the district you want to vote in. In the last mayoral election in Houston, in my area, there was 4,027 post office box registrations challenged. The incumbent mayor won by 4,000 votes. I'm not saying those votes had anything to do with his election victory or not. After the election, half of the post office box residents moved their voter registration. This is an opportunity for voter fraud, and the intention of this bill is to block that ability to use this process for fraud. There are 2 layers of voter eligibility that must be met. Are you a citizen? Are you 18 or older? Etc. And also, are you eligible to vote in this election section? Currently, if a voter registrar sends a confirmation notice, the voter has 30 days to respond. This bill adds a sworn affidavit form, which the voter will execute and includes the definition of residence so that there is no confusion by the voter. The new item that we're adding is the voter will either include evidence of their residence or indicate that they are exempt from those requirements on this affidavit. If the voter does not respond, this bill does not remove them from the voter roll. It puts them on suspense, where they will be not removed through 2 federal election cycles, as is current law. The following documentation is acceptable as evidence of proof of residency: an unexpired Texas driver's license, Department of Public Safety voter notification, a free unexpired personal identification card by DPS, an unexpired license to carry a concealed handgun, an appraisal district document address, a utility bill or address voter registration, an official tax document from Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. There are also some people that do not have actual addresses. For those folks, they will execute a document providing a concise description of the location of the voter residence. There are also several categories of people excluded from this process: a member of the U.S. Armed Forces or their spouse or dependent, a full-time student living on campus who may use a post office box on campus or in their dorm to vote, a voter whose address is confidential under the Code of Criminal Procedure, a federal or state judge or their spouse, who the federal, state, or judge whose driver's license includes the street address of the courthouse, peace officers holding a driver's license which omits their officer's actual residence, and commercial driver's license. I'll be happy to answer any questions about this, and I reserve the right to close.
So thank you, Representative Paul. I think you just read us the bill. It was excellent. Members, any questions? I think it's a good bill. Members, is there any reason you want to hear from resource witness first, or we can go through some members? We'll let you know they're here. Okay. Chair now calls Rose Clouston. Did I say it right? Maybe. All right. On deck would be Rose Clouston, Voter Protection Director for Texas Democratic Party, Susanna Carranza, and James Slattery. So chair calls Susanna Carranza. All right, I get you. Susanna Carranza, you're here on behalf of yourself and you're against this bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. And I guess I won't repeat. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I oppose this bill because it imposes extreme burden on a voter to confirm their residence address. I actually testified against the similar bill in the Senate a couple of days ago for exactly the same reasons, because it's identical. While I agree that we should prevent voters from taking advantage of the system, this bill is so restrictive that it will disenfranchise a large number of voters that are really not doing anything wrong. This bill makes it virtually impossible for any voter in transient or insecure housing to be able to vote. For instance, under the current election code, a person experiencing homelessness can use a location that's not an actual resident as their address. Usually can be any place that they spend significant amount of times or a place where they can keep their belongings. So it's actually, if a person happens to hang out close enough or near the corner of a commercial UPS store or something similar, that voter can legally claim that as an address. So might not be the case for all, but it's actually legally possible for somebody to claim that address. That's another thing about this bill is that it has a list of exemptions, but it really excludes any other professions that might have transient addresses and does not direct anything about homeless. So it's like there's several exclusions, but it really doesn't exclude the people that have a legitimate reason to not have the ability to provide all the documentation. I urge you to oppose this bill. It will disenfranchise a large number of people that are doing nothing wrong. Thank you. Any questions?
Members, any questions? None? Thank you. Chair now calls James Slattery. One moment. Okay. By the way, Rose Cluson, you'll be up next. Got you as James Slattery, Senior Staff Attorney for the Texas Civil Rights Project. And you're against this bill, is that correct, Mr. Slattery?
That's all correct.
Please proceed.
HB 3974 would require voters responding to a confirmation notice to supply, quote, evidence of the voter's residence address, unquote, by providing a copy of one of the documents specified in Section 4 of the bill, such as a driver's license, license to carry a concealed handgun, utility bill, etc., unless they qualify under one of the narrow exceptions also listed there. This evidence requirement clearly violates the National Voter Registration Act, which allows a voter to respond to a confirmation notice by simply stating in writing that they are registered at the correct address. It would therefore ensnare Texas in needless and expensive litigation from the moment it is enacted, which Texas will lose. We therefore recommend the committee not report the bill out favorably to the full House.
Chair recognizes Representative Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Slattery, can you talk about what the trigger is in this bill? When do they decide who they're going to go after, who they're going to look at to confirm addresses? Do you know? Or?
I think the secretary could probably give you more detail on that.
I'm going to talk to them.
But,
okay.
but I think it's, you know, if there's some reason to think that the voter is not eligible to be on the roll.
Can you elaborate on the last witness talking about, and I remember when I was doing a lot of voter registration, registering individuals that may be homeless or struggling with that you can use an intersection, and I think a lot of people have done that. Can you talk about that and how this impacts those Texans' rights to vote?
Sure. I think, you know, it is common for people to assume that everyone else is, you know, like them and lives at a fixed address for long periods of time. But, you know, many people, for many people, it's not the case. Either most particularly people who are homeless, which is why voter registration laws typically allow people to register by describing the location that they're at if they're not at a fixed address. Also, it's, you know, when we talk about bills like this one, we live in a very mobile society. People are moving all the time, and particularly when you are young, like a college student, you are changing addresses all the time, and it can be kind of hard sometimes for the voter registration rolls to keep up. And in fact, that's one reason why Texas's current paper-based voter registration system is so antiquated, frankly deteriorating, is that, you know, we are used to updating government databases online all the time, but Texas is one of only, I think, 10 states now where you can't just go on a website and update your voter registration address. You know, so regardless of the merits of this bill, I don't understand why it's coming before an online voter registration bill.
Sure. Let me ask you another question. So you talked about someone that may use an intersection or a description of where they reside. How would this bill work for them to then confirm? How would they get the notification that they need to confirm?
That's a good question. I don't think people, who don't live in a particular place, that they don't get mail easily, to put it mildly. So it would really be a disadvantage to them.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members. Any other questions for Mr. Slattery? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Chair now calls Rose Clouston. Did I pronounce it right? It's the last time, I think.
Yeah.
All right, got it. Rose Clouston, Voter Protection Director for the Texas Democratic Party, and you're against this bill. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Please proceed.
Good morning, committee members. I will keep this brief. I share many of Mr. Slattery's concerns, particularly about the pieces of identification that are allowed for confirmation within this bill. This doesn't seem to contemplate a number of real situations for many Texans, including those who might be in a nursing home and not get utility bills and might not have much documentation with their address that is approved by this bill. Or I personally have lived in situations with roommates where one roommate pays the rent and is on the utilities, and then I Venmo them for those things and didn't have these types of documentation of my address to prove this. Yet I lived in that place and that was my residence for voting and all other purposes, but I didn't have these types of documentation. I think there are many Texans who are in that situation and would not be able to meet the requirements of this bill and would then suffer the possibility of being put on the suspense list and potentially disenfranchised as a result. I know that none of you want to do that and want your constituents to be the victims of that, so would encourage you to not move this bill forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, members. Any questions? None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair now calls Gerald Welty. All right, happy San Jacinto Day, Mr. Welty. Got you down as Gerald Welty, here on behalf of the Convention of States and yourself, and you are for this bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Please proceed.
I keep hearing at these meetings, I think, no statistics, many Texans, just general terms that are being thrown out. And I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people are representing their own interests, which are contrary to the voters of Texas and the state of Texas. This bill, as I see it, is an excellent bill. I think it brings us in the right direction to protect the integrity of Texans and voters of Texas. When we talk about people who are on a street corner, whether they're going to vote in another county, another state, whether they're going to sell their vote, we have no idea. So I think this bill takes the requirements for voters to the point where it needs to be. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Fierro.
Thank you, sir, for being here and testifying today. Do you have any data for backup on that information you just shared with us?
That's exactly what I was saying about the earlier testimonies. There is no data.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Chair calls Cindy Phillips. Hey there, I've got you as Cindy Phillips here on behalf of the Convention of States and yourself, and you're for this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please
And hearing the other testimonies, I have compassion. I do. I have compassion for people who are in situations that are unlike many others. And I don't pretend to have the answers, but I do know that we have to safeguard against people moving in their address into other areas to affect, one way or another, affect the vote. I can't speak to it on the local level as much, but watching it in the national level in the 2020 election, I was horrified. And I was horrified by the call out, the public call out for people to move intentionally into an area just for the purpose of affecting the vote. So I don't pretend to know all the answers or have all the answers or how to help one side or the other. All I know is this bill seems to be moving toward the right direction in preventing the fraudulent act of moving into an area just for a vote and then moving back to another area, moving your address. So I don't know if that's, I don't have all the answers. I don't have a lot of answers, but I'm just saying this seems like it's going in the right direction.
That's why we have these hearings, because we don't have the answers either. So you're doing fine. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect Representative Clardy present. Is that correct? Okay. Chair now calls Fatima Menendez. Chair now calls Johanna McCrary. I've got you as Johanna McCrary here on behalf of yourself, and you're for this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please proceed.
Addressing some of the points that the other people have said about it takes away the vote for other people because they don't have a residency. But in the beginning of getting registered, you have to have some ID to state that you are a voter. But you have the right to vote, the privilege. The fact that you move and you don't have an address and you can't be able to describe it, it is difficult. But there are ways that you could put yourself, if you have a parent or a cousin or whatever, you can get, that could be your home residence, but you are away, like when a son is off in Europe working, he uses my home address as his permanent address. So there are ways that you can take care of that. So I don't see the bill being hampering or discouraging anybody. If you really want to vote, you're going to do what is needed. That's why I say, yes, go for this vote.
Yeah. Thank you. Members, any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Chair now calls Keith Ingram.
Good morning. Keith Ingram, Director of the Elections Division, Texas Secretary of State, here on House Bill 3974.
The Chair recognizes Representative Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ingram, we just heard testimony that you have to have an ID to register to vote. Is that accurate?
That is not.
Okay, so you don't have to have an ID to register to vote?
You do not. You do have to supply a driver's license number or last four of the social. Unless you don't have either one of those, then you can make a statement that you don't have one of those.
Is voting a right or a privilege?
It's a right.
It's a right. So we don't want to add a bunch of burdens to a constitutional right. Let me ask a question. What is the trigger for the confirmation process as described in this bill? When are you going to go out, and are the Attorney General going to go out and figure this stuff out?
So the current law is not being changed in that regard, and if a voter registrar has a reason to believe that a person has moved, that's what triggers the confirmation process. We do a mass mail out of voter registration certificates every odd-numbered year, and that's a non-forwardable piece of mail. When it comes back to the voter registrar, then the confirmation notice, that's the most common trigger for a confirmation notice.
Okay. Does the National Voting Registration Act establish standards with respect to written confirmation notice for potential change of address?
It does. It provides that states shall provide a postcard for a voter who has moved to confirm their address if they believe they've moved, and the voter has to be able to, on that same postcard, return it postage paid, indicating that they have not moved or their new address.
And what happens if they don't return it?
Then they go into suspense for 2 federal elections. If they don't show up and vote or otherwise update their address in that 2 federal election cycle, then they will be removed from the voter list.
Talk to me about homelessness, or people that move around or maybe don't have a permanent residence, but reside in a county, right now, how do they register to vote?
A homeless person can describe the location where they spend time and then provide a mailing address for mailing. The military, professional military service members, as well as over-the-road truck drivers, they have a variety of options available. They can provide a residence address where they used to live in the county. They can provide a residence address for a family member in a county, but the options for them are fairly limited.
For the individuals struggling with homelessness that you just described, they can put down like an intersection, right, on their voter registration or describe where they reside.
They can.
Would this bill impact their ability to do that?
No. On the bottom of page 3, there's a provision for a voter that has no address to be able to sign an affidavit that says this is where I
Is that a
reside.
new task that they would have to do?
It is.
They'd have to have an affidavit now to have the right to vote.
If their address was challenged with an address confirmation notice, they would have to provide this affidavit. That's a new requirement.
Is that, well, that's not for you to answer, I guess. I'm just curious why we need to add that burden to someone's constitutional right to vote. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else, members?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram.
Thank y'all.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on for? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on for or against House Bill 3974? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Paul to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I was going to point out that on page 3, it does describe how somebody could if they have no residence, or how they could describe where they live. That it was all current law already. Also, we're not changing anything to do with registration, obviously, so it's got nothing to do with that. Only thing this would trigger is when they send that confirmation notice asking you to verify because you haven't voted or there was a problem that they question your address, that you would then send in this verification. And it's an affirmation, it's not affidavit that they were doing, so it's easier on them to do that. So that would be the only place this would be triggered, and it would help people be able to do those without, it'll get all that done up so that it would be done before they would have a vote and might have an issue when they're trying to vote.
Thank you, Representative Paul. Chair recognizes Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Thank you. So is the concern is that people are voting twice, or that people are moving to register to vote in an election and then they move back somewhere else?
Well, there's a couple of things. So one, they could be using these addresses that are really just boxes in a unit somewhere to say that they live there and vote in that subdivision when they really might not live in that subdivision. They live in another place. So that would actually make sure that when you send in this voter confirmation that you would have to show the proof that you live in there. It's similar to that you would need to show when you register to vote in the first place. And the address that you register to vote in is where they normally would send you this, and then you would send it back showing that you live there.
And so why did you choose these 3 forms of photo identification? These specific 3 forms?
3 forms? What you?
The Texas driver's license.
I think there's 6 things that we've listed.
Well, how did you come to those?
Commented on.
Did you consult with anyone as far as like these being the best identifications or form of identification to prove?
Those are the ones that's already in current law that you use to register you to vote.
Okay. Did you consider, maybe passport, naturalization papers, something, additional items?
If they're listed as ways that you could register to vote with them, would be fine.
Have you reviewed the documents that a person needs to prove residency to get their driver's license?
Have I reviewed that recently? No.
Because there's I'm looking at it right now. There's several different documents that a person can use. And so to me, if it's good enough to get your driver's license, why would it not be good enough for you to use to register to vote?
If it's good enough to get you to register to vote, that's what we're using.
Well, that's not.
We're not changing.
It's
we're not
limiting.
changing the law. We're not changing the law. What it takes to get registered to vote.
You're getting rid of common law that has existed for over 150 years. It's eliminating that out of the code.
I don't think so.
It crosses it out. I mean, from what I'm looking at the bill right now.
If that's what you're using to register to vote, then that should be on this list.
So would a person who's currently registered, would they have to re-register?
No.
In their current, to prove residency? Are they grandfathered in?
But there's no grandfather. All this is doing is that if there's some reason that the county suspects that you're dealing, and as was testified already, the main reason that these come back is that they send you a new voter card and it comes back to them. So if they send you a new voter card to this and it comes back, and this happens quite frequently, as we mentioned, people moving, that they want to make sure that there's nobody really at that address anymore. But if it comes back and you really are, you have to send in a statement of residence affirmation to send in. That's all current law. All we're telling you is that inside your statement of residence form, you also show this proof that you do live there, which is proof that you already have used to register to vote.
I know there was some concern that I think that somebody testified earlier as far as if somebody is sharing an apartment with someone, and I know that renters don't pay property taxes when they're renting a home, and so they wouldn't have that documentation necessarily. So I mean, wouldn't that affect them?
No, they registered to vote.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Chair recognizes Representative Swanson.
I appreciate you bringing this, Representative Paul, and I wanted to make sure for the renters and all, they would, even if they weren't the one paying their power bill, they would still have their driver's license, their ID, any of those things that would confirm the address, and that would take care of this
They
issue.
would have had to have used those to rester to vote.
Exactly.
This doesn't change registration, and obviously they have everything that they've used because they've used it before.
And this business of being registered in places at many post offices and all has been an extreme problem in Harris County, and just want to thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Paul. This is a great bill. Members, any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Paul. Again, if there's no objection, the bill would be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. The chair lays out House Bill 2293 and recognizes Representative Patterson to explain the bill. Representative Patterson, I know you've got some thrilling stuff to say. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to lay this bill out for you and your committee. I know y'all have done a lot of good work this session. This bill is simple. It just says that voting hours should be between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., which is a massive expansion for 253 counties, I believe, in the state of Texas on the opportunity to vote and to cast your ballot. But what it does do is it does limit the 24-hour polling sites like what we saw in Harris County in the last election. But again, I will say that this is a massive expansion for the opportunity to vote, as I believe most counties only give you between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the opportunity. So we are expanding that. That's a great thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring this bill up, and I would respectfully reserve my right to close.
Members, any questions? You want to wait till the end?
No.
All right. Well, oh, we got a bunch of them. Okay. Are we hazing him right now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry. I believe Representative Beckley, I think Representative Beckley got my attention first. Chair recognizes Representative Beckley.
So are you taking local control away from people? Is that what you're trying to do with this? Well, I think you are.
Okay.
I think that some places need 24-hour voting, especially during a pandemic. And I don't think it's the right of the state to tell local entities how they should do it.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Clardy. We're going by height. The chair recognizes Representative Figueroa.
We're going in ascending order, so
yes.
it would be
okay.
Here.
Thank you, Representative, for putting this bill out today. My only question to you, is it a permissive bill? Would we be allowed to pick and choose in different counties?
It's permissive between the ranges of time, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I should add that if you were in line to vote and we eclipse that time period, that you still have the ability to stay in line. And if you got in line to vote before the cutoff of the time period, whether it's 7 p.m. or whether it's 9 p.m., you would still be able to cast your ballot inside that polling place.
Okay. The only reason I've asked is our elections administrator in El Paso sent us some data on how many people voted after 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
and it was a good, fair number.
Yes, sir.
And so that was the only reason. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Clardy.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you again.
Yes, sir.
It's been a while since we've had an opportunity to visit.
That's right.
Is there any significance to 69? Why you picked?
We were just trying to keep an opportunity for people to vote during kind of normal times of the day when people might be out and about. I don't know how to answer that question, sir.
Well, but you answered it well. I'm asking.
It's a very important question.
Representative Patterson, is that 69, you've got that, but historically, we've had 7 to 7 on Election Day, if I'm not mistaken. Is there a reason to move away from that to this broader range?
Yes, sir. Well, we think it's important that everybody have the opportunity to cast their ballot, and so this expands for 253 counties, I believe, or 252 counties maybe, the opportunity to vote for more hours of the day than most counties give right now. I mean, most counties give 7 to 7, and if they want to go 69 or 6 to 9, then they would have that opportunity to do so.
Some people might want to do that.
Yes, sir.
And go in that direction. But I guess, have you ever woke up at 5 in the morning wanting to vote at 6 in the morning?
I want to vote every day, sir.
Every day.
I'm a proud American.
We investigate that in this committee.
Yes.
And, I know you like to vote early, but do you also like to vote often?
I do, yes, sir.
So, but I guess the thing is, I'm worried. This is not an imposition upon counties who may not have the ability to staff offices from 6 to 9. And do you agree with me that it ought to be consistent state, regardless of county or size of the county? We ought to have exactly the same time periods. That's one of those things that ought to be uniform across the state.
Yeah, and there's also opportunities to vote on Sundays. I believe from like 1 to 4 in Denton County where I'm at. So we have voting on Sundays, and so I think we've given every opportunity for people to vote. We had 3 weeks of early voting in the last election. We had record turnout, and this simply expands that for most counties.
Y'all vote on Sundays?
In some cases, we don't work on Sundays, but we vote on Sundays.
We'll have to consult the book on that one.
Souls to the polls, Mr. Clardy.
Thank you. Souls to the polls.
Mr. Patterson, Representative Patterson, I appreciate this. I think we should kind of have some kind of standardized time so that people moving from different counties know when and where they should vote. Adding more hours is a great thing. Oftentimes you'll find me not wanting to spend more money, but this is an area where the state should be willing to step in and ensure that people have more hours to vote. I mean, I'm kind of hesitant to go to 3 weeks early voting, so if we keep it at 2 weeks, we should add more time so that we can make sure people have as much opportunity as they can to get there and to make it predictable throughout the state.
Yes, sir.
With that, Representative Busey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, do you represent Harris County?
No, sir, I don't, but 3 of my joint authors do, and I just picked up another joint author this morning that will be signing on, and the 4 of them do represent
Did they come to you and say, we've got too much voting going on during the day that we need to restrict access in the evenings?
These are freedom-loving Americans, sir, and they appreciate the opportunity for people to have the right to vote.
I'm just curious why we're a county that makes up 25%. We want to tell them when they're already in the window, when they can and can't allow people that have different work schedules, different activities that they have to do to keep their community going when they can and can't vote. We just heard Representative Clardy talk about how they have different times in his county to El Paso to everywhere else, making these a local decision. And this would take away access to the ballot box for 25% of people in Texas based on how we did it right now. And I just find that deeply concerning that we would want to do that. I think this should be a local control decision. We allow a range. So I guess my question is why? Why are we restricting those hours?
Yeah, I would just disagree with that characterization. I mean, we're expanding hours for what most people do in most cases. You did have a situation in Harris County where they kind of made up election laws as they went along, not cleared through the state.
Where they found that they couldn't do that? You said they made it up. Was it found that they weren't allowed to have 24-hour voting?
I think that they made a number of decisions, like having a rock concert outside of a polling place and having electronics within X number of feet of the door. There's reports of all types of things that went on in Harris County. My bill doesn't address any of those things. My bill just simply expands voting hours. Since most counties allow 7 to 7, we're just giving them an opportunity to expand those hours between 6 and 9.
Hold on, Representative Patterson and Busey, due to the time and us going to the floor, I want to make sure these witnesses get a chance to testify, and if we could reserve our ability to beat up on the authors after the witnesses, I'm totally fine with that. I mean, that's another time to do questions, but I want to make sure everybody out there, and we've got 10. Okay, so is that okay? Can you beat him up after the witnesses?
I would love to.
Okay, thank you. All right, and at this time, the chair's going to pass the gavel to Vice Chair Gonzalez. I'm not going to recognize it. We can do it afterwards, please.
You're not going to recognize it.
I'm begging you to have some courtesy and
Said something that was incorrect.
go ahead and proceed. I'd like to allow the witnesses to testify first.
First of all, I find it interesting that a person who wants to standardize voting times doesn't know the voting times of his own county. It's Sunday 11 to 4, not 1 to 4. Thank you.
Should want to beat you up afterwards. I get it. The chair is now going to pass the gavel to Representative Vice Chair Gonzalez. Just for this, I'll be right back.
Thank you.
That's not in the rules here.
All right. All right, the chair calls Cindy Phillips. You can pass? Okay. Next, the chair calls Gerald Welty, who is here representing the Convention of States and himself, and you are registered for the bill, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, proceed.
I'd just like to say that I believe this bill is traveling in the right direction, and as a voter, I like it. Thank you.
Any questions for the witness? All right, thank you, sir. Next, the chair calls Henry Bonner, representing himself and registered for the bill.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And my name is Henry Bonner. I'm for the bill. And I would like to have one comment there. I notice a lot of people seem to be concerned about this bill impeding the ability of people to vote. And I wish those same people would be concerned about my Second Amendment ability to be able to own firearms and that. But that being said, I feel like this bill is definitely something that would give some leeway to local authorities that currently are doing 7 to 7, like a rigid time frame. And I myself have been an election judge, and I've been on the as an election clerk and that, and I know what it's like to serve from 7 to 7, 12 hours worth a day. It makes for a long day. But I don't have the problem with these longer hours. I think we can probably, in our area, we can probably work out some kind of deal where we do some shift work or something like that. But I don't feel like people are taking the ability or the right to vote seriously enough that they could easily abide by these times that are being offered. With that, I'd give one time if there's any questions.
Are there any questions for the witness members? All right, thank you, sir. Next, do we need to call the, sir? Mr. Boner? So we do have a question for you.
Okay. If I understand your question, Mr. Boner, you have a concern about the staffing of the election office in these extended hours. Is that correct?
I just made the comment that I have worked 12 hours on these 7 to 7 deals, and with it being, if they choose to go from 6 to 9, that's going to be make for an extra long day. I have worked 16-hour days in a job before, and that makes for a really tough day, and even the next day or two following it. So these times, that's why I'm saying I'm pretty sure that we will figure out some kind of a way of going into some kind of a shift work.
And Mr. Boner, if you go 69, it's going to be harder to get staff in those early hours and those later hours, and particularly in areas like mine where you don't have an abundance of people. The larger counties may be able to staff those, but that's on the front end. You don't just show up there at 6. You have to be there ahead of time to open the office and do those things. So it seems to me an additional burden, whereas the times we've established, which I think should be consistent statewide, of 7 to 7, make more sense, and that's certainly ample time when you also factor in the ability for those who are eligible to vote by mail-in ballot, and those in the 2 weeks we currently allot for early voting. But to plug in these additional hours seems to, 69 seems to be a real challenge for most people.
I agree with that, but I don't see in here where it states that it has to be 6 to 9. It's giving you the option of flexibility to be, it could be 6 to 5 or 8 in the morning to 9 at night or something like that. And it is, we do have to be there. Usually we're about 30 minutes or so early to set up, and we're usually there an extra 30 minutes to an hour to shut down. Right. So it's not really just 11 hours that 12 hours that we're working at 7 to 7. We're actually there over 12 hours, usually about 13.
On the back end of 6 to 9, you would have to, there's cleanup and other things you have to do, so it really extends the amount that the workers who were volunteering to commit their time would have to do. So I guess I'm concerned about that, that back end and just this, with 69, Mr. Boner, that how that might impact those workers.
Will make for an extra long day. I was looking at this as being more so flexibility of being able to open earlier or stay later. In the area where I'm from, it's an industrialized area. I'm down in House District 25, which is down on the coast. There's a lot of chemical plants and stuff down there, and they operate 24 hours a day. Yeah. And so there's shift workers in that there. This would give them the polling places some kind of flexibility to work with the local area employment
I'm very concerned. I am concerned that 69 is going to require a degree and amount of flexibility that most people just don't have, and the ability to get those staff. I want to thank you for your testimony.
Sure. Thank you. Any more questions, members? All right, thank you, sir. Next, the chair calls David Carter. Carter? Yes. And you're here representing yourself, and you are neutral on the bill?
Neutral on the bill, and I'm Dave Carter from representing myself. As an election judge in a small county, Bell County, only 48 voting precincts, this looks like a solution looking for a problem. First off, to extend the hours to 9, at the end of the day, it's not an issue. If you're there in line at 7, you can stay there as long as the polls will stay open as long as they have to take care of you. So the only issue that might be of any substance is opening at 6, and I think that's a problem. I agree with Representative Clardy that this is going to cause staffing problems, and it doesn't sound like a sound proposal to me. That's my opinion as a judge on the bill.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the witness? Representative Beckley?
So what county are you in?
Bell County.
Bell County. Where's that? Where? Can you just tell me where that is?
Travis, Williamson,
Okay,
Bell.
sorry.
Up I-35.
Around here. Yeah, no, I'm. So one of the concerns I have is that my city of Carrollton, which is in North Texas, is in 3 counties, and already we have multiple, confusion amongst the different times. This is just going to add even more confusion because it's not standardizing anything. So do you understand? So I think you would have that in Bell County as well, too. Probably there's some cities that are multiple counties, and then every county is doing their own thing that could actually just add to the confusion.
It's not the same, but I just think there's other bills of greater importance to spend our time on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the witness? All right, thank you, sir. Next, the chair calls Rose Clouston. Representing the Texas Democratic Party, and you are registered against the bill.
That's correct.
Did I get your last name wrong? I said it correct,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning. What we've heard this morning, I believe, is a misrepresentation of the current state of affairs. Currently, counties have flexibility to hold voting during any hours that they so choose during early voting, while the standard that many have perceived due to the election day 7 to 7 requirement has been within that time frame. But right now, there is nothing within the law that constrains that. If there were, I am very confident that many of the counties that extended those hours during the fall would have been sued over it, as they were for many other things. That did not happen. So right now, this would limit the flexibility that our counties have to have voting when they deem it is appropriate for their county. In some counties, based on the work patterns and the school hours of their counties, they might decide that an earlier time is more beneficial. In other places, it is later. I believe that James Slattery is going to talk to you a little bit later, and assume he will share some of the information that he has shared with the Senate about who voted in those evening hours in Harris County. It was predominantly people of color, and we also saw a lot of nurses and doctors who were working very long shifts during the pandemic to save our lives, who would have found it much more difficult to vote if we had constrained hours. The other thing that I would note is that it was not just Harris County. You hear a lot of discussion in this committee blaming Harris County for a lot of things. As Representative Fierro mentioned, El Paso voted until 10 p.m. several days during the election. And there were also counties, including Webb and Travis, that had later hours that were allowed. These allowed flexibility for their constituents, and the administrative burdens that have been mentioned are best determined by those election officials. They know when they can get poll workers. They know how to do split shifts. They can make those determinations best, and this committee is not best equipped to make those decisions on a localized basis. We already see flexibility offered to our local election officials in smaller counties in terms of when they have to have early voting during the first week of voting and on weekends, acknowledging those challenges and those differentiation. I would encourage this committee to continue to allow counties to have that flexibility for their constituents.
Members, Representative Busey.
Madam Chair, thank you. So right now, and I agree with your understanding of it, and I was going to ask the Secretary of State, as long as it's within the days, there are no restrictions on hours.
Correct.
So this is adding restrictions on hours.
Yes.
So this is limiting voting hours in your opinion.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Representative Beckley.
So other than, some people just don't like that counties did 24 hours, was there any set problems that they're addressing with this? Like, is there noted voter fraud? Is there any kind of anything as to why 24 hours? Because I would think even in Harris County, you've got a lot of chemical plants that run 24 hours, and I would bet that a lot of them voted as well. And then I can think up in the Panhandle, we have a lot of meat packing plants in El Paso as well. Those are shift work as well. And a lot of people do shift work, not just plant people, but, there's people working out of their houses that are doing shift work at this point.
Absolutely. No, I have not heard of any particular challenges. I know that Harris County tried this model in the July runoff election and made improvements for the general election for their administrative needs, but I've not heard of any issues. You know, the poll workers receive the same training, whether they're working at 7 a.m. or 2 a.m., and are applying the same rules to the voters in terms of qualifying them and the machines and everything else. So I have not heard of any issues, but did see reports of that very thing that you described in terms of shift workers and chemical plant workers being able to vote.
So none of the poll workers, did any of the poll workers complain? Do we have complaints from poll workers that hated the 24 hours or anything like that? I mean, I'm just looking for, because I think this is just a bill that's worthless, to be honest with you.
I would completely agree that there is no objective that's being served by this that actually serves voters. It seems to serve a political objective, not one of voters.
Thank you.
Members, any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And since you mentioned James Slattery, the chair calls James Slattery. Who is here representing the Texas Civil Rights Project and is registered against the bill, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You're here representing Texas Civil Rights Project and you are registered against the bill.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Nothing like building a little anticipation, I guess, from my testimony. HB 2293 would impose a one-size-fits-all from the Capitol here in Austin on all counties in Texas that they must conduct early voting only after 6 a.m. and only before 9 p.m. It takes away from local officials the authority to set early voting times that fit the needs of their communities. Indeed, local officials often allow polls to remain open past 9 p.m. because extended hours voting is vital for shift workers, first responders, folks with irregular schedules, and voters with substantial family responsibilities that make voting during regular hours exceptionally difficult. Indeed, when Texas Monthly interviewed voters in Harris County who are participating in its 24-hour voting program, they found a number of voters overjoyed to have this option finally, because they would have found it nearly impossible to vote otherwise, including an engineer who works in the Houston Ship Channel for an oil field services company, an employee of Metro, Harris County's public transportation agency, a construction project manager, a, quote, overworked Amazon delivery driver, a, quote again, middle-aged teacher still wearing her business casual work attire, and an HEB employee. Further, the burden of taking away these hours won't fall on all voters equally. Limiting voting hours would disproportionately harm communities of color who tend to have less flexible work schedules. TCRP conducted an analysis with TargetSmart of the voters who used extended hours voting in 2020 and found that it was most likely to be used by people of color, more so than early voters as a whole. As such, taking away the discretion of local election officials to set voting hours that make sense for their communities would in particular have a disparate impact on people of color. We therefore urge the committee not to vote this bill favorably.
Thank you. And why would it affect people of color most, I guess?
So on the back page of my testimony here, you'll see two charts. One, the chart at the top, is the estimated demographics of all Harris County early voters. And you can compare that to the chart just below it, which is the estimated demographics of people who voted during Harris County's expanded early voting hours. And you'll see that the demographics of all Harris County early voters, the majority there are white, 62% Caucasian, with 38% being non-white. But then when you look at the extended hours voting pool, the white proportion of extended hours voters drops to 44%, and the proportion of voters of color who are voting during those expanded hours rises from 38% to 56%, so a majority of those voters.
And why do you think that is?
They have less regular work schedules than other people.
Okay. Members, any questions? Representative Beckley? Oh. Beckley.
So do you think that maybe some law enforcement, aren't they a shift worker too? Would they have used, did you come, or you didn't come across any?
Yes. So, you know, I think there was another representative who was quoted on a bill like this who said something that sounded folksy and charming, that nothing good happens after midnight. But actually, what happens after midnight are cops protect us. Paramedics come and save our lives. Firefighters come and protect our houses from being burned down. And options like this that have longer voting hours are vital to protecting the right to vote of those people who are spending the rest of their time protecting us.
So 24-hour voting kind of backs the belief then. Thank you.
Representative Busey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Slattery, it was stated that this bill is here to extend voting hours. Can you, but then we just heard from a previous witness saying that there are no limits to the hours right now as long as there's good notification about when we're going to vote. So can you clear this up for us? Does this bill extend voting hours?
Right. I absolutely agree with my friend Rose. It is deeply misleading to call this a voter expansion bill. What it does is it cuts early voting in those counties, which are numerous, that currently allow early voting past 9 p.m. Particularly, many counties go to at least 10 p.m. during early voting. So if you are a shift worker who also is a caregiver for a family member, and you don't break free from those responsibilities until, say, after 9 p.m., this cuts your right to vote. It doesn't expand it for those people. Further, I think Rose made this point that literally, because I wondered, like, am I looking at a different bill? Basically, the entire bill is just these words. Voting may not be conducted earlier than 6 a.m. or later than 9 p.m. That does not actually expand any voting hours. All it does is it cuts off the period from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for voting. And one other thing that I found striking in the sponsor's comments in response to one of your questions, I forget what your question was, but he mentioned, counties were doing all of these things and they were having concerts at polling places. Now that's a strange reference on its face because this bill has nothing to do with concerts. But I think it's telling because why are there sometimes concerts at polling places? It's to encourage people to vote and celebrate voting, which I think when you combine that with the disconnect between what this bill is claimed to do and what we can see on its face it does, I think the only interpretation is that this bill is meant to make it harder to vote everywhere.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next the chair calls Robert Green. Here on behalf of Travis County Republican Party Election Integrity Committee and himself, and you are registered against the bill, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm actually testifying more for myself than anything else. As an election judge, the days here in Travis County have been always a lot longer than 12 hours. The period of time beforehand to do our setup. And in many cases, there was once that I had to work until almost 11 o'clock, and that was delivering the votes to Travis County elections. I think 12-hour period is probably plenty to be able to vote in any given day. I have no problem with if a county wanted to use some of their early voting days to shift those hours around. But you're going to really have problems, especially in larger counties, getting personnel who are willing to work more than 12 hours at the polls. I wouldn't have any problem if they wanted to, say, shift one day of early voting, say we have it from 6 to 6, or move it forward and we be able to vote later, and that would accommodate those shift workers who who may have to work at a different time, but to do it for more than 12 hours in any given day, to me, seems excessive, and it's going to be tough on the election judges, especially. You can do shifts for clerks and what have you, but it seems to be a long period of time to force the election judges to be there at the polls. Any questions?
Members, any questions for the witness? No. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next, the chair calls Cynthia Weatherby. We have Cynthia Weatherby here. Johanna McCary? Johanna? And you are here representing yourself, and you're registered neutral on the bill, correct?
Yes, because I was wanting to figure this out because I'm totally confused because you want 24-hour voting ability, and then you're disagreeing for 6 to 9. It doesn't make any sense. This bill is just giving you the opportunity to extend the hours for counties that could be able to handle the amount. Smaller counties won't have to do it if they don't need it. Larger counties gives them the opportunity to do it. But the 24 hours, you know, that's, to me, is futile because if you're saying you cannot staff it between 6 and 9, 6 in the morning to 9, don't you have the problem for the 24 hours? I do believe that this bill is giving the opportunity to give their shift hours. It does give the opportunity for those people to get there. If you want to vote, you have that privilege. You want to go buy a TV and you know the store's going to close and it's only going to give you the TV for $10, you know people are going to get there. So I'm for this bill. And so that's my 2 cents.
All right, members, any
questions?
Any questions for the witness? Representative Clardy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate your concerns, Mr. Gray, because it does seem to me it gives a great advantage to those with a big staff who are able to, you know, meet these extended hours. Mm-hmm. You know, but I think it's important that we have uniformity around the state, mm-hmm. so that no matter where you are, whether you're in El Paso in a different time zone, you don't get an extra hour for that, Mr. Fierro, but that the hours are the hours and they apply equally to everybody. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, I agree with that. But one of the things is like if you got your line at 9 o'clock and you have like 100 people there, you know it's going to go longer because you're going to let those 100 people vote. So the hour is going to be extended by 9. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't see what is wrong with this bill to set some hours and standards. We can work from that. If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, we can always change it.
Right.
But I was an elected judge. You know, I just, you know, started work. I didn't even get to be just a clerk. I was given the judge position. It is longer hours. But if you're going to volunteer, volunteers are passionate when they volunteer. And to hear them complaining, that doesn't make any sense.
It just seems to me that 69 with a big staff is an unfair advantage.
What now?
That this would be an unfair advantage if you have a big staff to do 69 versus the 7 to 7, which...
No, I'm saying if this bill saying if you want to do it from 6 to 9, mm-hmm. and you have a smaller county, the county has that range of hours, and they don't have enough people or voters, they can say, well, we're going to be open 7 to 7 like before. That gives them that option. That county, the people there in that county need to respect. I mean, you have to have parameters. You just can't have it always open for everything. To vote, you make the time. If it's that important to you, you'll make the time. You'll get off work, or you'll take the day off. You will, if you really care about your vote. So that's all I got to say.
And especially considering you have 2 weeks.
Yeah, you got 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your testimony.
Members, do we need to call the resource witness? Yes, okay. All right, next the chair calls Christina Atkins.
Good morning, Christina Atkins with the Secretary of State's office on HB 2293. Yes, sir.
Representative Jadon.
Thank you, Chair. Can you help me out? Is there a section of the statute right now in the election code that identifies the voting hours?
Yes, I think it's important to note that this bill, I keep hearing references to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and I think that's what people think of because that's what voting is on Election Day. What this bill is doing is making changes to the early voting hours. And so 85005A, which is one of the provisions amended here, talks about what the default is for early voting in our counties, and that default is regular business hours. So that's the minimum required currently for early voting, is that counties conduct early voting during the days that they're regularly open for business during their regular hours.
Okay. And so section 41.031 just applies to Election Day for 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
That's correct.
Okay. Why do you think we did that on Election Day?
That I'm not sure of. I'm not sure why there's,
maybe it's more
why we opted to have different hours for early voting versus Election Day. So
okay. And so making it more consistent and closer time frames for early voting Election Day would probably make it more predictable.
I mean, what this is doing is this is providing outer limits because right now, even though the law says regular business hours, a county could always opt to do more than that. This is just providing a start time and an end time to those additional hours that they can conduct voting.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Thank you.
Members, any other questions for the witness? All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB? All right. Are you registered? Did you register to testify?
Not to testify, but I'm registered against the bill already. Susanna Carranza?
She's not registered to testify, so that's all.
Not to testify, but against the bill already. But I did wish to testify.
And
Valerie DeVille, same situation.
They're not registered to testify.
okay. Yeah, we don't have you registered to testify. I apologize.
We're registered against the bill, but not to testify, and we're told that we can choose to testify.
Oh, okay. I can't call you to testify on or against the bill if you're not registered.
I'm registered against the bill. I'm allowed to testify.
We recognize that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. With that, if not, the chair recognizes Representative Patterson to close on his bill, and I will yield the gavel back to the chair.
Okay, when did that change?
I close.
I got a quick question for him. It's a nice question. Oh, no.
Oh. Representative Busey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Patterson, we were talking earlier, and I think we got our point out, so I just, my concern is that this would limit hours because right now they're not defined. But it's not all work and no play in this committee, as Clardy always points out. Do you have a special guest with us today?
I do have a special guest here today. My mom and two of her close friends are here joining us in the audience today for this layout and my one on the floor. So.
Well, we're glad they got to witness a Representative Clardy committee layout today. So, no. Well, Mom, we may not all vote for the bill, but we'll still work with them on the committee floor. So
thank you, sir.
And yes.
Members, Representative Clardy.
Well, Representative Patterson, thank you for bringing this bill, and thank you for bringing guests with you today. It's always good to have moral support on such an auspicious bill. I would like to leave with these thoughts on April the 21st, which has particular significance in the state of Texas. And this comes from Sam Houston's message to his troops before the Battle of San Jacinto. Rally to the standard and be no longer the scoff of mercenary tongues. Be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Happy San Jacinto Day to you and your family.
Happy San Jacinto Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Did your mom get you ready this morning?
She picked out my clothes.
Okay, good. That's wonderful. She must be excellent. All right. Any other questions, members? If not, If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, we're going to stand at ease for a few minutes to wait on Representative Schofield. He's finishing up one more vote. So bill by Representative Swanson, we're going to let her lay it out, and then we're drawing it. So we can go into some voting and then go to the floor, and then we'll come back for public testimony on it. So at this time, the chair lays out House Bill 4459 and also lays out the committee substitute offered by Representative Swanson. The chair recognizes Representative Swanson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman, members. I want to make clear that all the committee sub does is a ledge council draft. House Bill 4459 makes several improvements to the laws governing our voting equipment. The first section addresses e-poll books. Last session, we passed my bill, HB 4130, to create the standards and certification process e-poll books must comply with, but some counties who use these devices did not believe the functions were mandatory to use, so this bill makes that abundantly clear. It also ensures that once voters check in on the e-poll books, the voters' check-in will reflect on other devices. The bill prohibits the transmission or storage of data outside the state, but we plan to have a further committee sub because Keith Ingram has informed us we need to make that the USA and not the state. The second section requires all software and data for voting equipment to be made, stored, and held by companies whose headquarters and whose parent companies are headquartered in the USA. The next section requires vendors to identify who runs their companies in order to receive taxpayer contracts. The fourth section will prevent swiping through multiple options on the ballot and selecting them in one motion. We want to protect voters from accidentally selecting candidates they didn't intend to. Each selection should be made with care and deliberation. Finally, the bill requires that machines allow voters to cast an incomplete ballot because many people come to vote for president and governor and don't want to vote for the proverbial dog catcher. This is a good governance measure which will reduce wait times. These changes in the law will increase transparency, strengthen election security, and inspire greater confidence in our elections. Thank you, Chair and members. Happy to answer any questions. Reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Representative Swanson. We will reserve your right to close, and we will also for those witnesses here to testify when we come back after adjournment. We will bring this bill back up and allow you to testify on that bill. So if there's no objection, the committee substitute will be withdrawn and the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Committee substitute is withdrawn and the bill is left pending. Members, we're going to stand easy just for a few minutes to allow Representative Schofield to get back over here. So, a few of you were here earlier. Who knows what today is? There you go. San Jacinto Day, April 21st, 1836. Fun stuff. That was a quiz by my chief to some staff this morning. He was a little disappointed they didn't know. True. My lineal ancestor, Andrew Briscoe, fought at San Jacinto. So, and we have 5 sons, all named after Texas counties. The youngest, at 9 months of age, his name is Hockley, named after George Washington Hockley, chief of staff to Sam Houston when he was in Congress, and was his chief de camp at San Jacinto. And then when the first guy, I don't know his name, was injured, who was in charge of the twin sisters, Hockley then took over the twin sisters at San Jacinto. And then like 5 years later, tragically dies in Corpus Christi. Just these guys, they had tough lives then. All right, we're going to move on to voting. Members, we're voting on House Bill 1397 by White, House Bill 2059 by Busey, House Bill 2092 by Sanford, it's committee substitute, House Bill 3080 by Oliverson, House Bill 3269 by Noble, House Bill 33 by Schofield, House Bill 3999 by Jeton with a committee substitute, House Bill 4369 by Noble with a committee substitute, House Bill 3297 by Allison with a committee substitute, House Bill 3920 by Dean, committee substitute, and House Bill 2574 by Representative Beckley. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 1397. Members, it's the bill we previously heard relating to the required disclosure of entities with an ownership interest in a vendor of voting system equipment. Representative Clardy moves that House Bill 1387, without amendment, be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Yes.
Beckley.
Can I clarify, is this 1397?
1397.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought you said 1387. You did.
We are at 1397. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Busey.
Yes.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro.
Aye.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails. And I was reading my script. You were right. Thank you. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 2059. Members, this is the bill we previously heard relating to the date of runoff elections. Representative Busey moves that House Bill 2059, without amendment, be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Aye.
Beckley.
Aye.
Busey.
Aye.
Clardy. Fierro. Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 2092. Members, this is the bill we previously heard relating to a requirement that a candidate for municipal elective office declare a party affiliation. Representative Schofield offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. Substitute is adopted. Representative Jeton moves that House Bill 2092, as substituted, be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Nay.
Beckley. Busey.
No.
Clardy.
No.
Fierro.
No.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield. Swanson.
There being 5 ayes and 4 nays, the motion prevails. Chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3080. Members, this is the bill we heard previously relating to unsolicited provision of an application form for a ballot to be voted by mail and to procedures for verification of a ballot voted by mail and creating a criminal offense. The chair moves that House Bill 3080 with amendment be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
No.
Beckley.
No.
Busey.
No.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro.
No.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 5 ayes and 4 nays, the motion prevails. Chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3269 by Representative Noble. Members, this is the bill we heard previously relating to the requirement that a ballot to be voted by mail be canceled and returned before voting in person. Representative Swanson moves that House Bill 3269 without amendment be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Nay.
Beckley.
Nay.
Busey.
No.
Clardy.
No.
Fierro. Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 4 ayes and 5 nays, the motion fails. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3303. Members, this is the bill we heard previously relating to the procedure for making any change from any voting standard, practice, or procedure authorized by the Election Code. Representative Schofield moves that House Bill 3303 without amendment be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Nay.
Beckley.
Nay.
Busey. Sorry. Clardy.
3303.
3303.
Yes.
Schofield.
Fierro.
No.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 5 ayes and 4 nays, the motion prevails. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3999. Members, this is the bill we heard previously relating to the powers and duties of a presiding judge and alternate presiding judge in an election. Representative Jeton offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hearing none, the substitute is adopted. Representative Clardy moves that House Bill 3999 as substituted be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Nay.
Beckley.
Nay.
Busey.
No.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro.
Aye.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 6 ayes, 3 nays, the motion prevails. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 1725. Members of the bill we heard previously relating to ballots voted by mail. Representative Swanson offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the committee substitute being adopted?
Sorry.
I'm reading my script off. 1 moment. Back up, members. We do not lay that out. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 4369 by Representative Noble. Members, this is the bill we previously heard relating to ballots voted by mail. Representative Swanson offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The substitute is adopted. Chair moves that House Bill 4369 as substituted be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Nay.
Beckley.
Nay.
Busey.
Yes.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro.
Aye.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 7 ayes and 2 nays, the motion prevails. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3297 by Representative Allison. Members, this is the bill we heard previously relating to the conduct constituting a criminal offense of election fraud, increasing criminal penalty. Chair offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the substitute is adopted. Chair moves that House Bill 3297 as substituted be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
No.
Beckley.
No.
Busey.
No.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro.
No.
Jeton.
Aye.
Schofield.
Aye.
Swanson.
There being 5 ayes, 4 nays, the motion prevails. Next, members, moving on to House Bill 3920 by Representative Dean. The chair lays out as pending business House Bill 3920 by Representative Dean. Members, this is the bill we previously heard relating to an application to vote early by mail on the grounds of disability or confinement for childbirth. The chair offers up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the substitute is adopted. The chair moves that House Bill 3920, as substituted, be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
No.
Beckley.
No.
Busey.
No.
Clardy.
Aye.
Fierro. Jatan. Schofield. Swanson.
There being 5 ayes, 4 nays, the motion prevails. The chair now lays out as pending business House Bill 2574 by Representative Beckley. Members of the bill we previously heard relating to the applicability of nepotism. I don't know what you wrote here. What? Are you a I thought you were a lawyer, not a doctor.
I'm back.
One moment.
Here. 25. Prohibitions, the appointment.
All right, so the bill we're laying out is House Bill 2574. This is the bill we previously heard relating to the applicability of nepotism prohibitions to the appointment of certain election officers. Representative Kane, the chair. Representative Beckley. I believe Representative Clardy moves that House Bill 2574 without amendment be reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Kane.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Aye.
Beckley.
Aye.
Busey.
Aye.
Clardy.
Myself, my entire family support nepotism.
Fierro. Jatan. Schofield. Swanson.
There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails.
Let me have that real quick.
We have to laugh. Don't we have to laugh? We just heard a lot of 69.
All right, for the audience, we will be coming back, taking up where we left off with Representative Swanson's bills. Our members, we do need to go to the floor. Is there objection? The chair hears none. Without objection, the committee will recess until final adjournment or recess of the House today. The committee.